Welcome back to America Newscape. I'm Joyce Rockwood, and my guest today might look a little familiar. He looks familiar to me as he makes his second appearance with us. David M. Spindel, photographer David M. Spindel, also known as my dad. Hello.
Hello,
How are
daughter
you?
dear. I'm doing just great.
It's great to
What more
see
could
you,
I say?
and I want to I want to welcome everyone back. If you're a baseball aficionado from days gone by, and especially if you're a Yankee fan, like I happen to be, then you might recall a super special player named Phil the Scooter Rizzuto, who was a New York Yankee shortstop for 13 years back in the day when they all stayed with just one team, who was elected MVP in 1950 and who was elected into the Hall of Fame in 1994. As a
Well,
kid,
listen to
I
you.
referred
You
to
know more than I do.
Wikipedia. As a
Oh,
kid, I recall his version of "Holy cow" being his trademark as one of the longtime radio and TV announcers for the same team. But David, my dad, has some fun stories to share about his relationship with the scooter that go beyond the stats and tend to pluck at the heartstrings and tickle a funny bone or two. Dad, welcome back to American
oh,
Newscape.
my pleasure to be interviewed by my charming daughter.
Dad,
What
let's
would you
start
like to
out.
know? I got a lot of stories.
I know you've got a lot to share. So let's start out first at the beginning with you sharing how you actually met Phil Rizzuto.
Well, actually, it was a chain of events. Initially, I was approached, I guess I could use that word, by an art director named Al Batista. He was with an ad agency and wanted me to do a cover for Yankee magazine. So, which I did. This is actually the first cover I did for the Yankees. I did a whole bunch of covers for them. And that got me interested in collecting baseball memorabilia because I really liked baseball, but I didn't really collect memorabilia. And the next thing I know, I was going to a lot of baseball card shows collecting stuff. As a matter of fact, I collected just a few things in my career to create all the different posters that I put together. I'm in here. It's a little guy down here amongst. Oh, I had over 10,000 items I collected to create all the collages. So
Who
I would do
counted?
baseball card shows, and this guy approached me. His name was Joe Pignatano. I even got him to sign a baseball for me. And he says he's
Cool.
working with a baseball place having a golf outing. He didn't initially tell me who. He says, "Would you like to donate some of your artwork?" Me being me, I said, "Sure, no problem." Then I said, "Would you mind telling me who?" He said, "Oh, Yogi Berra." I said, "Oh, Yogi Berra? Yeah, okay." I said, "Is there a possibility you could invite me so I can see what goes on?" So he said, "Sure." So I go to the golf outing, and Yogi invites some of his friends over to meet me, and one of his friends was, of course, the scooter. And Phil says, "I see you donated a lot of artwork for Yogi's golf tournaments. What am I, Gefilte fish?" He says, "Can you, donate something to my charity?" And Phil's charity was the St. Joseph's School for the Blind. Yogi's charity was the Handicapped Boy Scouts of America. And that started the relationship with Phil. One thing led to another. I went to their golf outings for almost 4 years in a row until they stopped doing them. But it was interesting about Phil. I can remember one day he called the house about something, and my wife Barbara gets on the phone, and she says, "It's your Uncle Phil." And she says, "Uncle Phil? You don't have an Uncle Phil." I said, "That's Phil Rizzuto." She says, "Why does he say he's your uncle?" I said, "All the plays I called my uncle. Ralph Branca, Bobby Thompson. The only one I didn't call uncle was Mickey Mantle. I didn't call him my uncle. He was basically too young to be my uncle," I thought. But he called me. He says, "Hey,
So,
Dave, oh, go ahead.
no, I was just
You
going
want me?"
to say, why don't you, well, you finish your thought. Go ahead, finish your thought.
So he called and he says to me, "David, all my rhododendrons are in bloom in my garden. Do you know a photographer that can come and take pictures?" So I said, "Well, I know one guy. He works pretty, inexpensively. He might come. When do you want?" He said, "Well, can he get here in an hour?" So of course, my wife and I drove out to his house, and I took a picture of him with all his flowers in bloom.
Oh,
Plus,
it's got my
I
favorite color
photographed.
there.
Yeah, and I photographed, his house. Well, he wanted me to take pictures in the house. I said, "Phil, this is a full-time job. I just came here for one thing." but
So,
we had a
Dad,
lot of fun.
yeah, you had a lot of fun. You donated your photographs to his incredible charities. It was New Jersey's St.
The
Joseph School
St.
for the
Joseph
Blind, as
School
you
for the Blind,
mentioned.
right,
Yeah.
right.
And so you donated your photographs because what they would do is they would hold fundraisers and they would auction your work off to raise money. Is that what would happen?
Yeah, well, and every year he had a golf outing where all the sports figures that he knew, not just in baseball but in football, you name an athlete, they were at Phil and Yogi's golf tournament, and they would auction off my photographs both in the silent auction and the live auctions. I donated a piece I had on Joe DiMaggio, which Joe had signed. It was a limited edition piece, and they raised more money than I could ever donate. I mean, I'm not. I might
Mm.
be famous, but I'm not rich and famous. But I'm rich in ways that most people don't understand. I mean, I got my health. I got a great family. I can pay the mortgage. Well, I don't actually have a mortgage now. My wife was smart this time. We didn't have a mortgage. And then he would call
So
me for different
wasn't
things.
yeah,
Go
wasn't
ahead.
there a time when you had sent him something and he sent you like a carton? Didn't he write something on the outside of the
Oh
carton?
yeah.
What was that
Well,
story? What am I mixing up?
well, well, what I did is I asked him to autograph 100 photographs of the cover I did for Yankee magazine, and he sent them back to me. And unfortunately, as he signed the print, he would put one on top of the other, and they stuck together. So I called him
Oh,
up and I said, Phil, I explained what happened. He said, send me another 100. Okay, it's fine. And I made him a check to pay to the charity. The UPS guy comes up. He says, you got another package from Phil Rizzuto. I said, how do you know? He says, well, he wrote something on the carton. I
you
cut it
saved the
off the
carton.
carton. I saved the
What did he
part from the
write?
carton. He wrote,
Can you
hope
read this?
it says, hope this is what you wanted. Say hi to Barbara, Uncle Phil.
Aw.
I saved
And
everything.
I think I'm sentimental.
Yeah.
You
Oh,
cut
then
out
I
cartons.
would go, and this is actually the cover I did for Yankee magazine. It's a
The
collage
one
of
on the
his
right.
memorabilia.
Wait, the one on the right.
Right,
You're
the
pointing
big,
to the picture of you and him. The one on the right, you
um,
mean, pointing to the one on the. There
right,
you go.
right there.
Yeah.
And these, I'm not used to being on a TV screen here, and that's me with Phil, where I donated one of my collages of another piece I did on him. I was always
And
creating
so
different things on Phil.
the picture that you did on the right, that was a piece that you were commissioned to create by Yankees magazine.
Yankee
And you had
magazine.
those Yankee magazine and you had those items yourself. Those are from your personal collection.
Yes, I had collected everything. And in that collage is actually the cover of the magazine that I did the shot for. I don't know if you could
A picture in a
actually
picture.
see, but it's a picture.
Go to the right. Yeah.
Yeah, over here is the magazine.
Yeah. Right.
So
And so,
it's really funny.
and was there, I couldn't see it because it's a little, it was up and down
It's
quick, but
kind of
was
small.
that the picture that also had the holy cow in it or no?
Yeah, well, the
Or is that
Holy
a
Cow is
different?
another story.
All right, let's talk about the holy cow. I think
Here's
everyone will
the
get a
Holy
kick out of
Cow. Phil Rizzuto always said "Holy cow," so I got a plastic cow and I drilled holes in it, and I actually created a rebus of it for Phil, which is that's the cow and a baseball sign by Phil.
So for people who don't know what a rebus is, why don't you tell them?
Well, a rebus using visual images to represent words or phrases like "Holy cow." So there's a cow with holes in it, and I also got a glove for him to autograph. A friend of mine who worked in a color lab said he got this at a Yankee game. They were giving it away, giveaways. It was Phil Rizzuto Day, and he gave me the glove. And it's got Phil's name in the bottom part of it, and Phil signed it. And then I ended up doing this great photograph of Phil. Holy cow! And in the glove is the number one with a hole drilled in it for his golf tournament. A hole in one. It's
So always
right.
creating puns and
Yeah,
visual
yeah. My brain never
brain never
shuts
stops.
off, unfortunately.
And so, okay, there was a story as well. I don't want to forget this story where there was a game and behind the stadium something was going on. Do you remember this story
Oh
with
yeah,
the
well, Joe Garagiola and Phil used to broadcast the games on radio, And one of the things that happened was Joe sitting with Phil, and it was in autumn, and they behind center field were these apartment houses, so they were starting up the furnaces, and smoke was coming out of the chimney. And Phil turns to Joe and says, "Holy cow! The Cleveland Indians are sending smoke signals." And then there's another story that happened with Joe and Phil. Joe said, I got to take a walk. My legs are bothering me. I need a little exercise. When he came back, he said to Phil, "What's going on?" He was looking at Phil's scorecard. He sees, we had PO for the first play. Oh, popped out. Another one, SO, struck out. And then he says to Phil, "What the hell is WW?" And Phil says to with a straight face, "I wasn't watching." That's Phil.
He's almost Yogi Berra-esque in a way with some of those jokes, I
Yeah.
think.
Well, I heard that
And then,
Joe Garagiola used to tell a lot of the lines and feed them to Phil and Joe.
and wasn't
Yeah.
there also a very funny golf club? Don't you have this
Oh
golf
yeah, that
club?
Rube. I actually have a photograph of it. Rube Goldberg made a golf club for Yogi, and it was being auctioned off at one of Phil's golf tournaments. And I tried to bid on it, but it went too high. But
So wait, before you show that, I was just going to say, for those who don't know, we might have a younger
oh,
audience too,
oh yes,
besides the old
Rube
time.
Goldberg was a
Yeah,
famous, crazy artist who made gizmos. I don't know what else to call them. Crazy inventions. And
yeah.
one of the things he made for Phil was a golf club, and he made it out of pipes. And this is the photograph of the crazy golf club.
And it's a little hard to see, but the golf club, the handle, instead of it being
Yeah.
straight, it has like angles and
Oh yeah, it's all
crazy
twisted.
things going on. Yeah. So
And he
RUBE,
says,
for those of you who want to
"You
Google Rube.
straighten me out." He wrote it because it was all crooked. So he says, "David, you straighten me out. How's my putter?"
All right, so let's go back to the Yankee magazine quickly for a moment.
Sure.
I think it's really, what you do is so unique. A lot of times people don't understand what it takes to create an elaborate photograph and elaborate still life like the images that you create. These are images that you create in your studio. A lot of times they are room sets that look like existing rooms in someone's home or office. And you're personally collecting these items and then painstakingly placing them and creating this ornate image that is really like something that takes people back in time. Do you want to talk a
Yeah,
little
well,
bit more about, what
yeah,
drives
there's
these
always.
images?
Well, what happens is every little thing I put in there relates to people who look at these. Well, I think it was 15 different posters on baseball, and each one of them had hundreds of items in it. And what happens when
If not
people look
thousands,
at these posters, excuse me?
if not thousands of items.
Well, close to it. I mean, I have 10,000 items in a room in my house back in New York when I had it. In any event,
Yeah.
people relate to different things they find in the photographs, and brings back the memories of when they used to go to the games.
Mm.
So it's fun to do. I
And
mean,
it's yeah, and it's your way of really taking a glimpse at history and supporting and helping people to have these really precious memories, right? Because as they say, one picture's worth a thousand
exactly.
words. And
Yeah.
so with one of your images, people can really look at this gorgeous still life and say, oh, remember when, right?
Right. Actually, I did a poster for the Brooklyn Dodgers, and I called it "Remember When." And it was fun. Just I would go to these baseball shows, and I pretty much bought everything I liked. I didn't go there looking for something specific. If I saw something that I thought I could use someday, I bought it. And people say, "Why are you buying all this junk?" I said, "You don't appreciate the beauty of these little things." I mean, today's
Yeah.
society, everything you buy is a throwaway society. But in the old days, when they made memorabilia, it's still here, which is great.
Yeah, they made it with a little bit more tender, loving care and craft, right?
Yeah.
So it
I
sounds
could.
like this was a really, go ahead.
No, I was just thinking another time Phil called me and he says they're honoring me at Yankee Stadium. They're giving me a special day. So he says, I'm going to get remarried to Cora. He says, would you like to take my wedding pictures? I sort of did a
Oh,
double take. So I ended up actually going, and this is one of the pictures I took.
Oh, so sweet. They were
So
married for many years. They've got children and
yeah, that
grandchildren.
was
It
that
sounds
was
like
actually their 50th anniversary. And what's funny,
Mhm.
hanging on the wall behind them is my America's Pastime poster right over here.
Ah.
I
So we
I
know he was
actually
really a true
decorate. Yeah, well, they had asked me if I could donate some of my posters and color prints to decorate the corporate offices of Yankee Stadium, which was kind of neat. They could have paid me, but they said, "Could you donate?"
fan.
I guess yeah, everybody wants me to
So
donate. I'm going to change my middle name to David Donate Spindel.
so it sounds like this was a really special friendship. Do you know how many years you knew him?
Close to 10 until he got
Yeah.
unfortunately got sick. I think the last
Mm,
time I saw him, he was in the hospital. He wasn't
mm,
doing too well. I remember
mm,
Barbara, my wife, gave him a little back rub, which he loved.
mm.
And we took a couple of pictures and stuff. His wife, Cora, says, I'm still very agile. I said, what do you mean? She bends over and touches her toes without bending her knees. I did a double. I said, I can't touch my toes sitting in a chair. You know?
And
And
then
then,
after he,
unfortunately,
yeah.
go ahead.
No, you
No,
go.
after he passed,
No,
yeah,
you
well,
go. No,
after
you
he
go.
passed, yeah, after he passed away, I was contacted by Sports Collectors Digest. They were doing a special story on him, and they asked me to
Mm,
send them some photographs, which they used. And then there was another magazine that did a whole story on him. Marty
mm,
Appel, who's a writer and PR guy for the Yankees, wrote a whole story about him, and it was in another magazine. And this is the story they wrote, and then there's
mm,
here is the collage I created of all the pictures I had of Phil. I mean, it just had so many things on Phil. Actually, this is
mm.
another thing I created for Phil of pictures I had of him. He loved it. I,
Aw.
donated this to his charity. They sold several prints of that, and to Phil, to show his appreciation, he says, "I'm going to give you a present for a change," and he gave me this picture of Yogi, Whitey Ford, and him signed.
Yeah.
So that
The chairman of
hangs
the
on my
board is
wall.
Whitey there, right?
Yeah, I'm running out of room on my walls.
I see that. And what about your shirt? Isn't that also a gift from
Oh, this is, I was a
what's the
member
shirt
of
say?
the Phil Rizzuto Golf Committee, which means I worked for free. No, I donated my services before he could open his mouth. He said, well, we're going to give you a shirt, make you official, so no one will stop you from taking pictures. Because a lot of the athletes, some of them didn't want to be in pictures for some reason. But most of them would, just pose. That's how I met Ralph Brank and Bobby Thompson. I mean, some of the greatest ball players, they all became my friends as a result of going to these golf tournaments.
Yeah, well, if there's one
I'm,
thing I
I'm,
certainly learned from you, amongst many other things, it's to come from a space of generosity, right?
yeah, it feels good to give back. You know,
Yeah.
I've donated to, I have letters from, I think, over 100 charities where I've donated things. Because I feel I'm not really, I'm comfortable. I make a good living. It's like the little old Jewish guy gets hit by a car, he's lying in the street. Someone comes over and puts a coat under his head. He says, are you comfortable? I make a good living.
When you say
But
little Jewish old guy, it reminds me of that time. Didn't you take Phil out to eat once? Didn't he order something kind of unexpected?
oh yeah, well, on the day that I went to, take the photographs, he says, "Well, come on, I'll take you and Barbara out to lunch," and we go to a delicatessen. I said, "An Italian guy going to a delicatessen? He orders matzo ball soup." I couldn't believe it. We had a great time. He loved me telling jokes. Him and his wife, like, well, at the golf outings, Cora and Carmen, which was Yogi's wife, would always ask me to tell jokes. So I would do it. I mean, remember, not to get away from Phil, but at one of Yogi's golf tournaments, I had brought the glove with the hole in one. That day, after I took the picture, Yogi gets up, hits the ball, turns around to talk to the guys, and gets his first hole in one in his life. Didn't even see
Oh
it
my
go in the
God.
hole. Everyone's
Oh my
cheering and
God.
yelling. He's yelling, "What's going on? What's going on?" He didn't know. His wife says, "From now on, you go with Yogi to his golf tournaments when he plays golf."
That's such a yogi moment, right?
Yeah. Oh, unbelievable. I took just to digress because he was funny too. Yogi said to me when I was taking this picture, I told him to fold his arms and do something like this. He says, "I can't do it." I said, "Why?" He says, "My arms are too short." I mean, he would come out with things that just made absolutely no sense. You know.
Well, before we close out, is there anything else that you wanted to share on the incredible Phil the Scooter Rizzuto and your friendship with him?
Well, what's needed, even though someone passes away, they're never really gone. Because yeah, for me, especially, I have so many mementos of the time I spent with him. It's like he's still here. It's not just Phil, it's
Mm-hmm.
anybody. You know, if you lose a loved one, the initial shock is very upsetting. But time heals all wounds, is an old saying. And as long as you still remember them, they haven't passed away. They're still with you.
Mm.
He's
Beautiful.
still here.
So beautiful.
I mean,
Yeah.
I even got him to sign. I did a photograph of baseballs, and they were all different colors. So I had a whole bunch of baseballs that were blue and white. So I got him to sign a blue and white one. He says, "Don't you want me to sign a regular ball?" I said, "No, no one else is going to have a ball like this." I even got Joe DiMaggio to sign one, and then I got
Oh,
Yogi to
wow.
sign one. So I got three
Oh,
balls
wow.
that are blue and white signed by these three guys in my special
Amazing.
collection.
Amazing. Well, with all of the amazing gifts and donations that you have gifted these individuals and their foundations, it's only appropriate that you have something as well that's super special back in return.
Yeah, well, what I'm doing is I'm putting all these stories and things of baseball into a book I'm putting together called Baseball Memories. And there's a whole page
Mm.
on Joe and Phil. For each player, I had a separate page in addition to all the other stories of things that happened. I mean, I got stories. People call me up. You got another story about Joe DiMaggio? You got a story about so and so? And it wasn't just baseball players. I met,
Mm.
Jerry Still was a dear friend of mine for 37 years. You know, right after I photographed
Well,
him, it was like we became friends forever,
yeah, well,
which
I
is
could
neat.
see
That's
why
why,
people want to be your friend. And I'm not just saying that because you're my dad.
yeah.
But we have
Well,
so
you
much
and
more
your
to share.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
but let me just
What were you
mention
going to say?
you and your brother call me a people magnet. Somehow I
Yes.
attract people. But the one
Yes,
thing
you
that
do.
we all have in common is I always tell them I get paid to do my hobby, and that's the way Phil felt about baseball and DiMaggio, or even Katharine Hepburn. She said they pay me to do this, and I would do it for free. How lucky can you be to do of what you do and get paid to do it? Besides,
Well, we love hearing all these stories. I love hearing them, and I know that people watching this are probably going to be excited to hear more as well. So I'm sure if we invite you back, you hopefully will say yes, and we can share more of these other stories with
I
these
just might
other
have a
amazing
few more stories. One of my favorite people was Chuck Connors, the rifleman. I got stories about him you wouldn't believe. He
Well,
was
then maybe
great.
that's a cue for a future segment. This has been
Okay, we'll
Joyce
do
Rockwood
Chuck
with
Connors.
David M. Spindel sharing treasured stories and fun anecdotes about Phil the Scooter Rizzuto. Additional links and information on David M. Spindel can be found in our See More section right below this video. And please consider subscribing to this channel and the David M. Spindel channel so you can stay up to date and feast your eclectic eyes on the eclectic creations. See you next time.
Wow,
Thanks, Dad.
I'm impressed. Goodbye.